Welcome back, everyone. Today is the first in a series of using card sketches to make card making easier. So today I'm going to be using a sketch from Just Add Ink, number 268, and from Stampin' Pretty, number 5. And the paper pad I'm using is from Kaisercraft called Factory 42, and it's a very masculine set. And I'm actually going to be making 2 Father's Day cards today. So this is just a quick flick through of the paper pad. I have already used some of this paper pad. It's actually really, really good for masculine stuff or steampunk, anything like that. So the hardest thing I find is to actually choose which papers you want to use. And I will be doing a whole paper pad and making a whole lot of cards just from one pad. That'll be coming up soon. So first I'm just going to choose the sentiment. I'm using the Just Add Ink number 268 sketch first. And I find it easier to choose my sentiment and then go from there. As you can see, I print these out to almost the right size of a card. And I'm using the dies from Waffle Flower Additional Circle to cut the circle out. You can also use a paper punch if you've got that, or just freehand it. And it doesn't have to be a circle, it can be another shape. The majority of cards I use are the American size of 5.5 by 4.25. But the index cards that I use are more of an Australian size. So when I glue them to the index card, I just have a little bit sort of hanging off. It doesn't really worry me. And on the back of the index card is where I'll take any notes that I find helpful for this particular kind of sketch. I'll go into depth about how I do the card sketches later on. Most of the time I do try and come up with my own designs, but if I'm in a hurry, these card sketches are a brilliant way to go. Someone's already done the hard thinking for you. All you have to do is just put down pieces of paper, cardstock. You can stamp on them as well. I just find them great stash busters to actually use the paper that you wouldn't normally use because it's either too fussy or you just don't know what to do with it. We've all got paper pads like that, haven't we? So I've just chosen the circle die that matches my sentiment. On the actual card sketch, it calls for a 2-inch diameter circle. I do write the measurements on my sketches if they don't have them printed on there, just so when I come to actually use a sketch, I kind of know, okay, I need a 4-inch by 2-inch rectangle or a 2-inch square or so on. And I'm just going through the scraps that I already have with this paper pad to see if any of the scraps are kind of what I want to use. So it's a really good idea. Keep all your scraps because you can use them. Even the really, really tiny rectangles, you can make it into a banner. So don't throw anything away. And this paper pad also comes with borders as well as sentiments, which is really helpful, especially if you're doing like a scrapbook or a photo album or even a junk journal. It comes in really, really handy for all that kind of thing. So I've almost chosen all my bits of paper. I have sped this up because, as I said, choosing the paper is where I come a cropper. I just really struggle choosing which papers go with which. And the ideal thing with using the paper pads is that all the papers in there coordinate with each other. So that bit of hard thinking is done for us as well. They're all meant to coordinate. They might not look it, but they do. And you can tell it's close to feeding time because the cats are making a nuisance of themselves on my craft table near my guillotine, because that's what cats do. Meanwhile, my puppy is sleeping on the floor next to me, and it is nearly his dinner time as well, but you don't see him making a fuss. He's actually been a really brilliant puppy, which is why I haven't put as many videos up as I normally would. I've kind of been distracted with him. So you can sort of see how it's coming along. And I sort of felt that the sentiment got a little bit lost. So I'm going to make a little banner which goes underneath it, which is on the sketch out of a darker darker paper. And I'm also going to back the sentiment on the same paper. So this is how I measure my die cutting. It's really technical. You just put the die on top and just move it until it clears the guillotine knife. It's not rocket science. I don't bother with rulers. I just say, oh, yep, that'll fit, it'll work. And I've just got to chop a little bit off here because it won't fit on my little die cutting plate. And for things like this, the little Heffy Doodle die cutting machine is brilliant. It is so handy because it can still sit on your desk, so you can sort of cut things whenever you need it cut. If you're sort of room challenged like I am, my craft mat is only just outside where the video is. That's my working space. So I don't have a lot of working space. My room is very, very small. So I have to use items that work within my space. My larger die cutting machine, the Spellbinders Platinum 6, it does sit next to me, but I can't cut where it is. So I have to actually physically move it onto the desk next to me to be able to use it. Let me know if you want a tour of my craft room. I'm happy to do that. It's nothing glamorous, but it might give you a few ideas for storage in a small space as well. So to cut the banner, you saw me there, I just measured the center point of that strip and then cut up where that center point is. Just made a little cut with my scissors, and then I just went from the corner to where I cut up to on both sides, and that creates the banner. And here I'm just trying to work out if I need it to be backed, the whole thing backed onto another color before I put it on my card. And I felt that it did. So the panel that I cut originally, which was 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, I just need to trim that down just so I get a border on the black cardstock that I'm going to be using. And I am predominantly using my little tape runners for today. You can use glue, you can use your ATG gun if you've got one of those. I'm a bit clumsy with my ATG gun. I find that I go really wonky with it. It is good if you're just like spending a day just doing cards. It is really quick, because otherwise you've got to refill your tape runners quite often. And this paper pad that I'm using, the paper is, it's not thick. I think, let me see, does it say how big it is? No. I would say at a guess it's only about 120 GSM, or close, oh no, it's not even 80 pounds. It'd be less, it'd be like 65 pounds, I think, roughly somewhere around there. So if I used glue, I thought I might actually see the glue lines, which I didn't want to do, which is why I've used tape runner in this instance. If it was cardstock, like 80 pound or above, then I would use glue. And for this first one, I didn't want anything raised up off of the card. I just wanted it all flat. But this is where you can really get creative and put foam tape on your embellishments as well, just to raise it up off the page and create a little bit more interest. So apart from me trying to choose which kind of papers I wanted to use, this card pretty much came together in 10 minutes, which for me is unusual. Normally I take a really long time. I really take my time with the cards. I struggle with if I'm going to do embellishing, if I'm going to raise things off the page, if I want to do ink splattering, which, you know, it's fine to do all that if you've got time to put into those sort of cards. But my aim today was to try and get 2 cards done quickly using the card sketches and still have them look as good as if you spent like 2 hours on a card. And I think I accomplished that. Now, to actually put the card panel on my card, I tend to put things down crooked. You guys know that by now. I have a wonky eye. So I let things like my scoreboard help me. You can use guillotines to do this. Anything that has a 90-degree angle. You put your card base into the corner and then you put the card panel directly on top, and 9 times out of 10, it'll go on straight. So quick and easy, and just quick and easy. So we're moving on to the second card now. This paper pad has also a sheet with it already mostly cut out for you. All you need to do is just chop off those tiny little paper tabs that are left behind. You don't have to do that. I do, because I like the nice clean look. And I know the sketch there has like a bow and ribbon. I didn't want the bow and ribbon, so I'm adapting the card sketch to suit the occasion that I need it for. So it's actually quite a florally card sketch, and I'm making it into a masculine card sketch. So even though you've got the card sketches there, you don't have to follow them exactly. They're just a guide for you, a starting base, so that you go, oh, actually I can do this, or I can do this. You don't have to follow them precisely, but they're a really, really good starting point. So again, I've fast forwarded this bit quite a lot where I'm choosing which papers I want to use. And I am using some of the scraps here as well. I love this piece of paper. It's corrugated iron, which here in Australia, a lot of the country, like the outlying country sort of areas, a lot of the roofs are out of corrugated iron. Sheds, we have like our garden sheds, they're mostly out of corrugated iron. It's just a thing here in Australia. We use it a lot. So this was a scrap from the first card. And those little rectangle offcuts that I've got there, I am keeping them because they make good banners. I love this bit of paper. It's sort of like little cogs, quite steampunky, and it is a little bit embossed off the page too, which is interesting. And then I sort of thought the sentiment again got a bit lost, so I'm going to pop it on top of another colour to make the sentiment stand out. And I really liked this one here. It's sort of, I can't think of the name of what the pattern is, but it's used a lot, like in motor vehicles, like your big utes and things like that. It's used as the stepping plate to get up into the vehicle. And it's also used, I think, as the tray in utes. It's quite a robust kind of metal, which this pattern is derived from. So I'm actually backing the whole piece with that because I thought it really brought out that centre panel, which is steampunk clocks. And I really thought it brought it all out. Now the offcut actually fits across the card front completely, but I didn't want it to, because then I sort of thought that you're missing, or the 3 strips sort of got a bit lost. So this is where I adapt the ribbon part of the sketch. I'm going to turn this piece into a banner instead. And I'm deliberately not giving you any measurements because you can, again, make the measurements what you want them to be. This one I did change up a little bit, and I kind of forgot that I changed it up a little bit. So some of my measurements ended up being a little bit off, which you'll see in the final card. I had to kind of keep trimming things back a little bit because at one stage I was using the American measurements and then I switched to the Australian measurements, and it kind of got a bit messy. It all worked out fine in the end because no one knows, like the recipient is not going to know what measurements it should have been. So I just really made it completely my own. So the measurements on this one are a bit all over the place, but it still worked really, really well. And the tape runner that I'm using today, you can see here that I have to reposition things because, again, I can't see things straight, and I mucked up where that middle one was meant to go. And I use the Tombow Mono Air tape runner, and I find that if you don't press it down, you can lift it up before you actually have the final placement of it. So here I'm just making the banner. So I'm just chopping it down just a little bit because I didn't want it to go across the whole card. I only wanted it maybe over 2/3 or 3/4. So here I'm marking the center point, and then you grab your pair of scissors and you cut up a little bit to however shallow or deep you want your banner to be. And then you go from the outside corners to the inside. And it's simple as that. You don't need a fancy punch or a fancy die. And here I thought the sentiment was still getting a bit lost. So I'm just going around the edge of the sentiment, and I'm using Distress Walnut Stain. It pretty much is permanently on my desk next to me, this little ink cube as well as the applicator, because I find this particular colour works well on pretty much every other colour you can think of as edging it. It's quite a natural colour. So I've popped the banner there up onto some foam strips because I wanted a bit of a shadow effect. And then just popping the sentiment on. And now I'm trying to decide what colour card I actually want to put it onto. And I sort of thought I really liked the craft card, but then it was still lacking something. So I popped on the black, and I really liked that. And then I really liked how then you back that then onto the craft cardstock. So it is multiple layers or multiple mats with this particular one, whereas a sketch only had one mat, and I've now created 1, 2, 3 mats. So you can see how you can adapt. And this is where my measuring got a little bit wonky. So I've cut most of the wonkiness out. You can see one little fine strips of black there. I didn't want to torment you with how many times I had to adjust it. So now the card base that I was putting it up against was the Australian size, and I sort of wanted it to be the American size of 5.5 by 4.25. And then I cut my base card the wrong way, didn't I? So I actually ended up with, let me see, it is 5 7/16 by 4 1/8. So it didn't even fall to Australian or American standards, but it still fits in an envelope. So even though it's a weird measurement, it still works. So on my sketch, how I said I back them onto index cards, on the back of the index card, I will actually write the different layer measurements to make it a little bit more seamless next time I do it. Now I had to be careful with tape runner on this little bit because I had the raised element. So I probably should have done the raised element last. We all learn. So that's my 2 sketches done. So basically about 10 minutes per card. I think they came out really well. Let me know what you think and if you'd like to see more of card sketches brought to life. And I will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye for now.